Garden Soil Myths Debunked. Healthy Soil Secrets from a 55-plus Practitioner. Hey there, friends, and welcome to Meaningful Living. It's always a joy to connect with you. Pol and Nick are so happy to have you here today. Pol and I are constantly searching for the most helpful and interesting information to share with you. Have you ever felt a pang of worry hearing that the soil in our gardens is dying, or that vegetables aren't as nutritious as they used to be? Today, we're going to bust those myths and show you how to properly care for your land without wasting extra time or effort. Before we dive into our topic, we want to ask you, how are you doing today? Are you feeling good? Drop a few words in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Remember, when working in the garden, always pay attention to your well-being, especially how you're feeling. After all, when we work in the garden, we're not just nurturing plants, we're nurturing ourselves. So let's learn how to avoid unnecessary worries and keep our peace of mind while we garden. Is our soil really running out of nutrients? Where do soil nutrients really come from? Many of us seasoned gardeners have quietly wondered, if we're not dumping on tons of fertilizer every season, where exactly are our plants getting their strength? It might surprise you, but the true source of soil nutrients isn't just compost or those fancy bags at the garden center. It's rocks, good old earth-born rock material, right beneath our feet. Over time, wind, water, and billions of hard-working microbes help break down these rocks into finer particles. This process, called mineral weathering, releases calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, iron, and trace elements into the soil. Here's a little insight that's comforting to know. Even the sand, silt, and clay in your garden, they're just finely ground up rocks, still quietly offering up nutrients. And unless we're paving over our gardens with concrete, this natural cycle never really stops. It's slow, yes, but reliable. Studies from the USDA and soil science journals confirm that rock weathering still contributes nutrients year after year, especially in gardens where the soil is left undisturbed and teeming with organic life. For those of us in our golden years who appreciate slow growth, patience, and nature's quiet wisdom, this is a powerful reminder. The earth still gives, and it gives in its own time, just like we do. Why plants don't need as much as we think. Now here's something that made me smile the first time I learned it. Plants don't actually need that much from the soil to grow strong and healthy. That might sound surprising, especially when we've been told over and over again to feed the soil or boost the nutrients. But the truth is, much of what a plant needs comes not from fertilizer, but from air, water, and sunlight. Let me share a story that still amazes me. Back in the 1600s, a Belgian scientist named Jan van Helmont did a simple but powerful experiment. He planted a small willow sapling in a pot and only added water. After 5 years, that tree weighed over 160 pounds, and yet the soil in the pot had barely changed in weight. What does that tell us? That the vast majority of plant mass is built from carbon dioxide and water, not just minerals in the soil. Let's bring that down to the backyard level. Imagine your soil has just 2% iron, a perfectly average number. That tiny percentage holds enough iron to grow over 1.3 million carrots in a single square foot. Can you picture that? 1 million carrots from 1 square foot. Now that's what I call abundance. Of course, we know that farming removes nutrients over time, especially in commercial fields with heavy harvesting. But in our home gardens, where we grow a handful of tomatoes, a patch of beans, or some cucumbers for the grandkids, we're barely scratching the surface of what the soil holds. Add a little compost, maybe some crushed leaves or grass clippings, and you're more than covering what your plants take out. And that's good news, especially for those of us who like to garden with intention, not with overwhelm. Gardening in our senior years isn't about chasing perfection. It's about joy, balance, and learning to trust that nature already knows what to do. The fear-based myths that took root. I know many of us have seen those headlines over the years. They pop up on the evening news or in gardening magazines. Our soil is dying. Food isn't what it used to be. Vegetables have lost their nutrition. And for folks like us, who grew up picking ripe tomatoes straight from the vine or digging carrots with our grandkids, it's easy to feel a little uneasy. I remember how I first felt a sense of dread when I heard such claims, thinking all my efforts were in vain. But let's take a closer look. Back in the 1990s, researchers began comparing nutrient levels in foods from the 1950s to more modern produce. And yes, they found some dips in calcium, iron, and vitamin C. But here's the part many people never heard. Those same scientists didn't say our soil was depleted. They actually pointed to something else entirely. Changes in crop varieties and how we measure nutrients today compared to 50 years ago. Just think of the tomatoes we grow now. They're bigger, firmer, and built for travel. But the ones we grew in the 50s? Smaller, softer, full of juice, and yes, slightly more concentrated in nutrients. It's not that food got worse, it's that farming changed. And unfortunately, some folks ran with the wrong message. Media headlines exaggerated, supplement companies started selling fear, and suddenly every garden aisle had a miracle powder promising to fix dead soil. One popular claim said copper levels dropped 80%. But what they didn't say back then was that we used toxic copper-based pesticides, and that's what inflated the numbers, not some magical soil richness. So, before we start blaming our gardens or rushing to buy expensive amendments, let's pause and ask, are we hearing science or just clever marketing? Because here in the garden, truth grows slowly, just like everything else. How can you truly tell if your soil is healthy? So by now, you might be wondering, if all this talk about dying soil is overblown, then how can I really know if my garden soil is still healthy? Well, here's the truth many folks miss. You can't tell just by looking. Not completely, anyway. The only way to truly know what's going on underground is to test your soil. Think of it like going in for a checkup. A soil test is like a blood test for your garden. It tells you what's missing, what's abundant, and what's working just fine. And just like our own health, we don't always feel the warning signs until something's really out of balance. But here's the good news. Most home gardens, especially the ones cared for by thoughtful, experienced gardeners like you, are doing just fine. Unless you've been growing the same heavy feeding crops in the exact same spot for decades without adding anything back in, your soil is likely holding up well. Still, it helps to know the signs. Healthy soil often shows itself through vibrant plant growth, a rich, earthy smell, and that soft, crumbly texture we all love pressing between our fingers. And let's not forget the earthworms. If you've ever turned over a shovel of soil and spotted a few wriggling friends, consider that a thumbs up from nature. So before you run out to buy that expensive imported mineral blend or 10 different bags of amendment, pause for a moment. Your soil might already be more balanced, more resilient, and more alive than you think. Because when it comes to gardening, just like aging gracefully, sometimes the simplest, most natural approach is also the wisest. The real secret, organic matter. Let me tell you something that years in the garden have taught me. When in doubt, don't overthink minerals, think organic matter. It's the humble things that make all the difference. A scoop of compost, some raked up leaves, a pile of soft grass clippings, or a bit of aged manure. This is where the magic begins. These materials do more than just sit in the soil. They feed the microbial life that keeps everything humming below the surface. They help hold moisture, keeping roots happy through dry spells. And best of all, they act like thousands of little sponges, slowly releasing nutrients as your plants need them. The beauty of organic matter is that it works with nature, not against it. In fact, a long-term study from Rodale Institute found that soils rich in organic matter held water up to 30% better and produced more resilient crops in times of stress. It's no wonder the organic gardening movement embraced this approach decades ago, not because we were running out of minerals, but because organic matter builds a healthier, more adaptive soil system. It's simple. You feed the soil, and the soil feeds your plants. Just like how we take care of ourselves in our golden years. Gentle inputs, slow rhythms, and steady nourishment. And when you watch your garden respond, greener leaves, sweeter tomatoes, full of flowers, there's a deep kind of joy in knowing you helped nature along, one wheelbarrow of compost at a time. That, my friends, is the real wealth in any garden. Treating vegetables and ornamentals the way they deserve. Now that we've talked about the beauty of organic matter, let's roll up our sleeves and get practical. Because every gardener over 60 I know loves a good, down-to-earth solution. Here's something many don't realize until they've spent years in the garden, like we have. Not all gardens are created equal, especially when it comes to how much nutrient support they really need. Take your vegetable beds, for instance. If you're growing tomatoes, beans, lettuces, or squash, especially in raised beds, those plants are going to pull nutrients out of the soil every time you harvest. That's natural. We're removing food, after all. But replenishing it doesn't have to be complicated. Just work in a couple of inches of compost at the beginning of each growing season. If your plants seem a bit pale or sluggish mid-season, a light sprinkle of slow-release organic fertilizer can help perk them up. Now when it comes to your ornamental garden, the roses, ferns, hostas, and hydrangeas you lovingly planted over the years, it's a whole different story. These plants aren't harvested, they're not pulling nutrients at the same rate. And unless you see real signs of stress, like yellowing leaves or stunted growth, there's truly no need to fertilize them every year. I'll tell you from experience, after growing thousands of ornamental plants in my own garden for over 2 decades, I've never fertilized them, not once. And yet, they continue to bloom and thrive with a quiet dignity, year after year. So, if you've been wondering whether you're doing enough for your flowers, let me reassure you, sometimes less is more. And in gardening, as in life, peace of mind often comes from trusting the natural rhythm of things. Why over-fertilizing does more harm than good. Now let's shift our gaze for a moment, not just toward our garden beds, but beyond the fence into the bigger picture. As older gardeners, many of us have lived through decades of change. We've seen neighborhoods grow, streams dry up, and wildflowers vanish from places they used to thrive. And we've also learned something valuable. What we do in our own backyards matters. Every time we use more fertilizer than our soil actually needs, that excess doesn't just disappear. It runs off with the rain, travels through drainage, and ends up in nearby rivers, ponds, and lakes. And that's where it becomes a problem. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, nutrient runoff from fertilizers is one of the leading causes of water pollution in the US, triggering algae blooms that suffocate fish, disrupt ecosystems, and even contaminate drinking water. Now I know our small gardens might seem like a drop in the bucket, but when millions of backyard gardeners each overdo it just a little, the effect adds up fast. We think we're helping our roses bloom brighter or our lettuce grow faster, but sometimes we're doing more harm than good to the soil, to the water, and to the wildlife we've always admired. So here's a gentle reminder from one longtime gardener to another. Before you tear open that big bag of triple-boosted miracle mix, ask yourself, has this soil actually asked for help? Sometimes the best gardening decision is the one where we hold back, not out of laziness, but out of respect for the land, for the future, and for that quiet wisdom we've earned with age. The wisdom of generations and modern knowledge. In a constantly evolving world, it often feels like new is always better. But when it comes to gardening, Nick and I often discuss how our approach to it has changed over the years. Do you remember how our grandparents just added compost and manure, without thinking about complex chemical formulas? They intuitively understood the importance of organic matter. This was their wisdom, passed down from generation to generation. Now, science confirms their wisdom, showing that organic matter is truly key to living soil. All those worms, humus, and microbes we've talked about in our other videos, by the way, links to those are in the pinned comment below this video. They're your tireless helpers, turning organic matter into gold for your plants. So, this doesn't mean we ignore science. On the contrary, we combine age-old wisdom with new discoveries for the most effective care. This symbiosis of tradition and modern knowledge allows us to grow bountiful harvests with respect for nature. Gardening as meditation and a connection to nature. In a world that's constantly changing and often brings stress, the garden remains our sanctuary. Every time we touch the earth, we feel a connection to something larger than daily worries. It's not just physical labor, it's a true meditation. Feeling the soil between your fingers, watching a tiny seed transform into a lush plant, listening to the birds sing. All of this helps us slow down, focus on the moment, and reduce stress levels. When we understand how soil works, how it thrives thanks to invisible microbes and tireless worms, we feel like part of a grand, amazing ecosystem, not just consumers. This brings a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. It's a reminder that nature is generous and always ready to share, as long as we treat it with respect and care. So, when you're working in the garden, remember this. It's not just work, it's a source of joy, peace, and a profound connection to nature. Let your garden be your personal sanctuary. So what should we really do now? If you've stayed with me this far, and I hope you have, here's what I'd love for you to carry with you back out to your garden shed or your quiet patch of earth. First, let's put our minds at ease. Soil isn't running out of nutrients, at least not in the way some headlines claim, especially not in home gardens where the care is personal and the harvest is gentle. Nature continues to rebuild itself through weathering, through microbes, through the slow and steady return of organic matter. Second, food isn't dead. Sure, some modern crops may have slightly less of certain nutrients thanks to changes in varieties and large-scale farming techniques. But the vegetables you grow yourself, with your hands and heart, they're full of life. And according to the USDA, for most Americans, nutrient intake has remained stable, not because of supplements, but because of diverse diets and year-round availability of fresh food. And finally, let's remember that less is often more. A scoop of compost, a soft layer of mulch, a little patience. These small acts add up, and they're enough. Because gardening at its core isn't about fighting nature, it's about working with it. It's not about doing more, it's about doing things wisely and with care. So don't panic, don't overbuy, and certainly don't let fear replace your joy. What your garden needs most isn't a miracle cure. It's you, your attention, your steady hand, and your trust in the quiet magic of the soil beneath your feet. Wisdom grows here. So the next time someone sighs and says, "The soil isn't what it used to be," or "Gardens just don't grow like they did in the old days," give them a gentle smile. Because you know something deeper. Good soil is alive, not just in nutrients, but in the stories it holds, the memories it grows, and the hands that care for it. You've watched seeds become harvests, you've felt the seasons shift through your fingertips, and you've learned that nature doesn't need to be rushed, just respected. So keep adding that compost, keep walking your garden paths with patience, and keep tending to your soil not with fear, but with faith. Faith that the earth remembers, faith that what we give we receive, and faith that with each small act of care, we pass along something lasting. From my garden to yours, happy gardening, friends. If today's video gave you peace of mind or a fresh perspective, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Meaningful Living. Nick and I are always happy to share useful information with you. And to learn more about our little helpers in the soil, worms, humus, and microbes, be sure to check out the pinned comment below this video. We've left links to other interesting materials there. We'll see you in the next one.